For the benefit of our community and the public, I would say that we are now back in part 1 of our agenda. Our part 3 item has been fully debated by Council, and we now come back to the recommendations for that agenda item, for which we have a proposer and a seconder for the adoption of the business case. The recommendations are: 1, that members note the key findings of the full business case prepared by the Council for the Isles of Sea Links project, a copy of which is attached to Appendix 1, and 2, that members give approval for the Chief Executive to submit the full business case to the Department for Transport for formal consideration. So I have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Apologies to our community and members of the public for the delay in this, and we will now move swiftly on to item 9 of our agenda, which is the Cultural Centre and Museum Future Governance Model, and that's introduced by our Strategic Director of Place, Economy and Environment, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. The report, I think, is self-explanatory in a way, in that we've been starting to build our business model now for the Town Hall redevelopment, the Cultural Centre and Museum. And one of the key issues we need to consider is what that future operating model looks like. What is its governance structure? So we've taken advice from Stone King, who've been working with both the Museum Association and the Council, looking at the new governance structure and finding what the right appropriate governance model could be. There are a range of different models that would be available to us. The one that's been proposed as the preferred option is a charitable incorporated organisation based on a foundation constitution, and that gives the most benefits. It's the least has the least administrative burden, and also protects the new entity moving forward. It's a sound model that's been used in many places elsewhere in the country. So the first recommendation really is to get an endorsement from members that you can also consider that is the right model moving forward, following the advice of the expert legal advisors that are set out in Appendix A. The second point we need to discuss today really is feeding into that, is what the heads of terms might be for the lease of the Town Hall to the new entity. And it's important that we get this agreed now, because it sets some of the dynamics, if you like, and costs moving forward, both for the new organisation but for the council. So one of the things we need to look at is, what do we rent the property for? And in order for us to ensure that the capital works that we do at the moment do not incur VAT costs, it's important that the lease of the Town Hall be set at a peppercorn rent. And that's the tax advice that's been received, because that will protect the council from a rather substantial VAT bill in the long term. One of the things we've also been considering is the length of the lease. So how long should that lease be to the new entity? And there's a range of options available to us. The shortest really is 25 years, and the reason for that is that any new entity will want to also be seeking funding from grants moving forward, and most grant funders will look at an organisation and expect at least a 25-year lease to be in place, against which they would give grant funding. So the shortest minimum period they would normally accept, that's the Arts Council, National Lottery and others, is usually 25 years. Many would like 30 to 35 years, but I've erred on the side of caution in the recommendation here in terms of heads of terms, and suggested 25 years, but with a renewable 5-year term, and that's one of the things Stone King advised in the advice that's attached in the appendices. One thing we also need to be aware of is what the standard repair and maintenance lease would look like, and what we're trying to ensure is that the council's responsibility is limited to the structure of the building and external repairs. So the new organisation will be responsible for things like insurance and internal repair works and day-to-day maintenance. Those heads of terms will come back to council for approval, and once we bring that back to council for approval, of course, we'll have more details around what those long-term liabilities, if you like, what the cost of the repair to the structure will be, and we'll bring a further report back to council. So those are 3 recommendations. The first one, what is the entity? So the proposal is a charitable incorporated organisation. that the heads of terms we start drafting now to form part of the agreement as we move forward, and that those heads of terms will be brought back to council with a full understanding of the long-term costs associated with it. And the reason why we need to do this now is that when we put our round 2 lottery bid in for the round 2 national lottery bid in November, they expect at least some details now of the governance structure for the new organisation. And I've got a meeting with the Arts Council this week. We're also asking similar questions about what progress we've made around the future governance of the organisation. And the intention will be is once we've got agreement on the structure, we'll start to create a shadow board and get people recruited into those positions so that the board can the new board will start to have ownership of some of those key decisions that we need to make over the coming months. So, Chairman, they're the 3 recommendations before you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. As colleagues know, this is a very exciting and complex project with much work having been done already. I do believe this is the right time to accept the expert legal advice on the future governance model. However, I'd just like to emphasise to everyone that this is with the full support of the Museum Association trustees, so everyone is working very closely together on this. And I'd also like to point out that recommendation 3 brings further detail back to full council, and so with those caveats I'd like to propose all of the 3 recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the recommendations. I have a couple of questions. I think I know the answer, but I think for the wider public it might be useful to know. Now, when let's assume it all goes smoothly, it gets passed over to the Museum Association or whatever the new entity is, and then the council has they rise and fall under their own auspices. There, if they fall over, it's not the council's problem anymore, and the building will revert back to the council, and we have no other liability. And I think that's fairly important. If that's the case, I hope it is.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. Nicola?
Just to confirm that the model that we're looking at, the council's role is as a landlord. It's a landlord-tenant relationship with the new body. So there is no intention that the council would be on the board of trustees. So our liability would be as landlord.
So essentially, broadly, same liability we have with Dibble and Glove, which is effectively 0. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to apologise to Councillor Dean, who I should have asked first, but I got lifted under the collar by my Vice Chairman. So, Councillor Dean, apologies, and please come in.
That's fine, Chairman, thank you. Absolutely. Nicola's explained it very well. The report's pretty clear. The only thing I'd add is that although the lease will be 25 years, or whatever we agree on, the intention is for this to go on forever, basically. The project aim is to make the town hall, to bring the town hall back to life with the performance area and the museum house there as well. So that's the only thing I'd add, but yeah, I'm happy to second the book.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford, please.
So just pick up what Councillor Grottick said. She said full support of the Ards and Silly Museum Association. Actually, their meeting is until the 25th of September, when they will be discussing the Stone King recommendation. So we haven't actually voted on that yet. Is that correct, Nicola?
Oh.
Okay. So the formal decision of the Museum Association is yet to come. What we have got at the project board is an agreement this is the right governance model. There are different decisions for the Museum Association to make, namely in terms of how we get to this new organisation. So it could be that the Museum Association decide that they would like to morph into the new organisation. That's one of the issues, one of the options set out in the report. I think they've nailed that on the head and said we don't want to run a new organisation. That leaves 2 options. The Museum Association need to decide whether they want to transfer their collection to the new organisation or whether they want to loan it. So they're the key decisions that they now need to make in relation to the model. But there is a preference from all parties as a preferred option of a charitable organisation that isn't the museum and it's not the council, it's something new. So the question though that they're going to answer is how they transfer the collection over.
I understand we have to go through to the new organisation before we can have that set up before the next phase of the National Heritage Lottery funding. What if there isn't the interest in the community to take on the role within this new organisation? Is that been identified as a risk?
So there are a number of risks, and you're right, it's getting the right people to do this. Now, one of the questions will be how many trustees will be set up. Now, that could be as low as 3. I think probably ideally 5 is what's the thinking at the moment. And it's then going out to say, well, who are those people in this community or beyond? Because it might be that you want somebody with an external perspective as well. So that's the next stage of thinking, is how do we make sure we get the right calibre of people now? That's in everybody's interest. So we're all working together, putting our heads together to say, who are these people? Who might it be? Who might we want to go in court? And what interest might be from the community? There's a risk there won't be enough. But you could go down as low as 3 trustees to set it up in the first instance. But I think however many there are, they need to be the right people.
Thank you. Councillor Roger.
I suppose my question is, I don't know whether it can be answered here, is we're entering into a new lease with a new entity which is very much part of the Museum Association morphing or whatever, yet we're still in dispute with the current lease with that organisation. Will this process bring that process to a close before we enter a new lease, or where are we at with that situation?
Not sure I want to say too much in public.
I just wanted to raise that.
Having a solution helps bring that last chapter to an end. So it will help us in our negotiation.
Thank you.
If I may add, I mean, obviously, the reason what we're talking about here is the absolute requirement for us to work together to find a new home for the museum. So obviously this project, if it hopefully comes to fruition, solves that problem, and therefore there shouldn't be an ongoing dispute.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
I think my question may have partly been answered, but I was going to ask, do we anticipate having any council-appointed nominees as part of the new governance arrangements?
There'd be no reason why a member couldn't stand as trustee, but the model, following discussions at the council workshop previously, was that the council wanted to step away and let the new body develop with a fresh start, a new entity, a new start, no baggage. And I think that was the point really, was that this was something new and fresh, and it didn't come with any baggage or strings attached. So the intention at this stage would not be to have a council representative as trustee.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
I just note in recommendations 2 and 3 that, and from the report, that we want to enter into a landlord-tenant kind of agreement, and that being a landlord has financial and regulatory obligations. I just want to make sure that we are aware of those and planning for those in the future, because making sure that guarantees on the building work, if it does happen, are completely in place, and that we're not setting up a liability for the council 10, 20, 30 years down the line. So it'd be good to know that contingencies are in place for that.
So the reason why I've suggested the 25 years is a lot of the guarantees, warranties that have come through will be around about 25 years for the external fabric works, and that's why I'm trying to suggest that 25 years might be the best period to look at, because then we'll need to have a look at what do we do with solar panels after 25 years, etc. So we'll bring those costs back to you. So we'll look at the life cycle costs of the building, and the next stage of next iteration of heads of terms, we'll have some costings on that from the engineers and the cost consultants. So we can have a look at that in more detail at this next stage.
Thank you. Councillor Watt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No indication of the level of the peppercorn rent. The reason I ask this is that the lifeboat house, for instance, the rent there per year is 1 puffin. I just wondered if any thought of giving what could be the peppercorn rent.
I think it's actually named as just £1 rather than 1 puffin in the Stone King suggestions.
Could you just explain, Councillor, how the rent of one puffin is actually delivered, please?
Yeah, I have to come back to you on that one. All I know is that it's been suggested that it's just one puffin a year. Or it could be a gannet egg, but I think it's one puffin.
So you're probably in arrears.
Right, can we move on to the recommendations? We've had a proposer and seconder. All those in favour, please. It's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We move swiftly on to item 10 on our agenda, which is the proposed consultation on replacement fixed trading locations, which is in the hands of our Chief Executive. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. The next two items, as you can see, members, are linked, but I'll do with the first one. Obviously, as the Cultural Centre and Museum project continues to hopefully get towards a firm conclusion, members asked that we give consideration to the options for the relocation of the fixed trading sites that are behind the current town hall, or whether or not members wish to offer any new fixed trading sites. So as a response to that request from members, officers have produced a possible list of sites. Those sites, Rebecca's here today representing some of the officers, were put together by representing highways, environment, planning and corporate property. And they're a long list for us to go out to consultation with the public and the existing operators to ask whether any of those sites have a strong preference, or indeed whether any other ideas come forward during that consultation period. That we will then bring back to members in time for us to allow a tendering process to commence early in the new year, in order that we are able to offer a new site, if that's what members deem to be acceptable, in time for the beginning of the summer season, end of March 24. So it's to allow us to go out to consultation on the long list of sites and any other sites that members or public may want to bring forward. And in parallel to that, a piece of work is already commencing in terms of reviewing or putting in place a firmer street trading and pop-up street trading policy, which will come back to Council for adoption early next year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Sims.
Good report. I'm happy to pose those recommendations. One thing I would say, the Atlantic Slip looks like an absolute non-starter to me. I just think it might well be advisable to remove that, because I just cannot conceivably see it happening there. And I'll have to propose it, as I said, and also on the basis it doesn't include other potential areas, which it doesn't, because it's going to consultation. It's something we have to do, and we have to do quickly. So, yeah, off we go, really.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Not wanting to stir a hornet's nest, because I've been through this hornet's nest, but why was the Holgates included on the list?
So Holgates is actually it's a street trading operation rather than a fixed trading operation at the moment, so that's there as a street trading site. The other thing is we're looking at an alternative site here that is very close by to that site, which would perhaps give a different solution. So it's there, it can be brought forward, so anybody else wants to bring that forward from the community perspective as part of the consultation process, it could also be considered.
So we are going to have giving community a chance to put forward positions as well?
Sorry, my button wouldn't work, but yes, as I said at the beginning, these are our our list, if you like, to start the consultation. If any other ideas come forward, they'd be more than welcome.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roger.
I suppose that's answered my question on that note, because I have to say I'm very disappointed with all these sites. You've got 2 next to toilets, 1 by a petrol station, and 2 in working slipways. I don't think that really is conducive to increasing the standard and quality of our fixed and pop-up street trading sites. So I hope we can do a wide consultation and have another think outside the box of where we might be able to position these, what are food outlets at the end of the day, in better positions. So I look forward to the process.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, I think we all know this whole topic is very sensitive and potentially contentious, so I just urge officers to make sure members are fully appraised at every single step. I really don't want us to get to just a handful of days before this is going into a council report or a planning application, because it just has a recipe to backfire, doesn't it? So I think if members could be regularly appraised of every potential option, I think it would probably be very helpful for all parties.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims.
Just referring back to Holgate, and I take on board what Nicola said, but having seen the Thai lilies down there now for a long period of time, and I've discussed this with other members, I just have not perceived any loss of amenity whatsoever to that area. It seems to be absolutely fine, and Holgate seems to be very crowded with school kids having fish and chips and things like that there in the early evening when it's open, and I would say it's not a problem at all. So I do think we should include it, but the trouble with Holgate is you have that 4 to 6 week period where it's unavailable because of the championships. So maybe we could stop the championships.
I'm sure you didn't mean that, Councillor Sims. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Mr. Sims to put that forward himself in the consultation, and I'll propose recommendations.
Thank you very much. I think we've already had a proposal, so second it. Thank you. All those in favour, please. Thank you. That's passed unanimously. And we'll move swiftly on to the linked one, which is item 11, and also in your hands. Paul, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This was just a tidying up exercise, if members agree. The current operators' permissions are coming to an end, and therefore we have this period from now until beginning of next year, when the site could be available if members so wish. And in consultation with other officers, we felt the most expedite thing to do would be to offer the current traders the ability to continue to trade there if they so wish until March 24. I have talked to the consultants on the Cultural Centre Museum to see whether technically that would cause any problems from a construction point of view, and I'm advised that it would not up until March 24.
Thank you very much. Anybody wish to? Councillor Sims?
Second.
Well, I have a proposer and seconder, so all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Item 12 on our agenda is the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Review Action Plan update. Also in your hands, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This was really just to bring members up to speed ahead of what is planned to be a light touch LGA revisit to the islands in October. I think it's Council Week actually that the LGA are expected to come and visit us, and members will be invited to meet with the LGA. And therefore it was timely that the Corporate Peer Review Action Plan, which members will recall was undertaken in September last year and came to Council. It has then gone on to scrutiny with some minor amendments made, and therefore it's just to bring to your attention that document exists and is regularly subject to update. I think linked to it, though, and I know Anita raised some points over the weekend, particularly around the service plans, and previously the week before the last members' meeting, I think also about performance reports. And so in consultation with the Vice Chair and the Chairman, it's my intention to bring before you in October a performance management framework document for the Council in order that members can formally approve what is your performance management framework. And in that, I'm expecting to recommend to you that service plans and also performance reports come in part one of your Council reports. So if you approve that in October, that will happen, as well as there'll be fixed dates for the whole of the calendar that you can clearly see that will form your performance framework. It will also outline the role of both officers and members in terms of the performance management of the Council, and that will, as I said, come to October Council. So it's a linked but separate item. So it's just to bring to members' attention that there is the revisit of the LGA, and also the report and the action plan has been to scrutiny and will continue to be subject to regular review.
Thank you very much, Paul. So it is the recommendation that we note this, but I have a proposer, please. Councillor Sims, seconder Councillor Mumford. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Item 13 is Strategic Workforce Plan 2023 to 2026 in the hands of our HR lead, Tina. Thank you. Tina.
Thank you, Chairman. This report sets out a new 3-year council workforce plan, which sets out the council's strategic direction, vision, priorities, and an action plan for its current and future workforce for 2023 to 2026. The plan sets out how we will attract, retain, develop, and support our employees in order to meet current and future workforce requirements. This report also addresses recommendations contained in the corporate peer review and also the action plan that the Chief Executive has just addressed to develop a workforce strategy. In addition, the workforce strategy and action plan will address some of the issues and recommendations contained from the latest staff survey around leadership, communication, engagement, and the health and well-being of our staff, so we will be able to deliver targeted strategies and support. Members are asked to agree and approve the strategic workforce plan for 2023 to 2026. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Tina. Councillor Bedford, please.
I'm sorry, it's me again. Thank you, Tina. I've got a bit of an issue with this, I'm sorry to say. I think the strategic workforce plan needs to link with all the service plans of each service, because there's each service plan has identified areas, and I appreciate it's a strategic report, but I think there's a lack of connectivity between the service plans for our authority and this strategic workforce plan. And I actually don't think the staff survey completely links into it as well. So I've written loads and loads of stuff which concerns me, but on the whole, I just feel that it's a lot of words, but I just don't get a feel of which direction our local authority is going regarding its workforce. You know, what are the right numbers of staff do we need? You know, having the right member of staff in the right job. Is there some form of generic working that we can incorporate? So, it's an interesting piece of work, but from my point of view that's had experience with this, I find that it lacks connectivity with the service plans and a little bit with the staff survey. But because there was so much to read with all the council stuff, I haven't come up with any, could we look at it this way? You know, I've just said, I'm just uncomfortable with some areas of it.
Tina, would you like to come back on that, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Anita. So to give members a flavour and obviously previous discussions with members, so in terms of timeframes, we've run the staff survey. We've recently had the Local Government Association in as well, only last month, a couple of weeks ago, in fact, to deliver all staff or all heads of service and extended leadership training around how to conduct their service needs analysis. So in terms of this piece of work, obviously this is the first formalised strategy that the council has had around a workforce plan. What we are intending to do, so now that the heads of service have had their training, we are going to be rolling out simplified documents to capture, in line with what Paul has just said around the service planning and the performance management cycle, simplified document to capture those needs. And obviously there may be costed recommendations, which again in the covering report around, has to be within budget and, costed and prioritised with the Section 151 officer's approval. So it's a process at the moment. We've set out strategic intent and direction, so that what will flow from that now is the service planning and the service, heads of service need in order to inform that. So we have got an action plan that within the actual workforce plan document, which addresses many of the recommendations from the staff survey and from the corporate peer review. obviously flowing from that is then we will roll it out. We need to speak with the heads of service and collate all of their needs, and that will form the whole package. So it's a process at the moment. We started in March, we've run some training, strategic document, and then heads of service.
You're saying we have to vote for an unfinished piece of work? Because my understanding is that we've had a workshop about on-island working or off-island working for managers. And to go to the staff survey, some of the staff feel disconnection because lack of, visibility of our managers. And also there's this term which is new to me, disaffection, about a zone of disaffection for some of the council workers, and that is at a -20, and that talks about a loss of trust and dissatisfaction within the organisation, and that sort of worries me a bit, because this is the people that provide our services and represent our council, and the fact that they feel disaffected does worry me a bit, or some of them ones that actually, filled out the survey.
Thank you. So in terms of, just to provide members with a bit of assurance, obviously this was also queried in terms of the balance of the deal. So there's two spectrums. So the LGA, Local Government Association, have come in, and just to provide members with a bit of assurance, we're probably, in comparison to other councils in terms of how it's been benchmarked, the average is about -18, with all councils being in the minus figure. So it's very close to what you would expect from the LGA. They've given us some assurance in terms of, but it does provide a benchmark. So in terms of going forward, in terms of our first anonymised staff survey, obviously it gives us some actions and targeted strategies in order to look at to go forward, and that's what we've aimed to sort of address within our action plan.
With respect, I'm not interested in other councils. I'm interested in this council and the workforce within it, and how we're supporting them, and how we want to get the best out of them, and how we support them to do it. So, yeah, I take on board what you say about other councils, but it's a bit like a red rag to a bull to me, because I'm actually interested in this council, and I'd like us to be gold standard in everything we do. Probably an ideal dream, but I am interested in what we do with our workforce and how we support them.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, I'm not a million miles away from Anita's point of view on some of that. I think there's some really good work in the strategy, but I was a bit disappointed by just how weak the feedback on the staff survey was. It seemed to be a pretty generic form in terms of methodology and some timelines. Half a dozen sort of quotes on what's good, half a dozen quotes on what's bad, and not a great deal in between on how we move forward. And if there is talk of action plans and forums and all that sort of stuff, I think it would be really helpful for us to be party to that, or at least see that. And if there is a forum, I think there's certainly members who would be willing to sit on that forum. At the moment, it feels like officers and staff sit on one side of the table and members sit on another side of the table. I'd certainly like us to sit more collaboratively around the table. But I don't know if that's possible. It doesn't seem like it's impossible, but I think we could do more. But my main question was, in the staff survey, it talked about innovation and staff wanting more innovation, but I didn't really know what that meant. Whether there are any actual examples of what good innovation looks like, what we could be more innovative on. It just seemed like a bit of a word that was thrown in, but I wasn't really sure how to interpret that.
Thank you. Tina?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. This is actually something that we've picked up directly with the LGA in terms of forming an action plan and going back to the staff consultation group around, because I agree, I think it was a little bit woolly in terms of what was presented, and we've asked for best practice, best examples, and this is an area that we would like to work with the LGA in terms of how we can eke out some of that feedback. So absolutely happy to involve members and circulate some more detailed feedback on that particular area, perhaps outside of full council once I have a bit more information to hand.
Thank you. Councillor Grotting, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hope the officers see as a positive that members actually want to get more involved in this and have more engagement. And I think it's probably indicative of the fact that there's so much going on at the minute that actually we have got a little further down the road than I actually would have liked without more involvement from members. But I think, if I make two comments, that this is, first of all, very good that we've got a strategic workforce plan, but it's part of a wider look at lots of areas within the council where we realise that we've got to firm up areas of governance and protocol. So perhaps as a way forward, members might be more comfortable slightly amending the recommendation to say that members agree and approve as a work in progress the strategic workforce plan for 23-26. Looking forward to further engagement with members as the plan progresses. Would you be agreeable to that, Tina? In which case I would propose an amended recommendation.
Tina?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Grottick. I'm happy with the recommendation as long as the Chief Executive is also happy with that recommendation.
Yes, he is. Thank you. Okay, so we have an amendment to the recommendation as set out by Councillor Grottick. Could I please have, I've got a proposer and a seconder for that amendment. Could we vote on that amendment first, please? All those in favour? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. So that's carried. So with that amendment to the recommendations, could I have a proposer, please, for the recommendation? That's Councillor Grottick and Councillor Bedford seconding. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Tina, for the report. We move on now to item 14 on our agenda, which is the Isles of Scilly Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan and Feasibility Study and the design of the dump path, walking and cycling route, which is in the hands of our Head of Environment, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you. Members will recall in 2022, following funding from the Department of Transport, the Council appointed a consultant to support the development of the island's first local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. In June 2022, the Council held public and stakeholder engagement sessions to understand the community's priorities to improve the highway and footways for active travel. Since the consultation, a draft LCWIP has been produced, which you can see in the appendix, in accordance with government guidance and taking into account the island's particular characteristics. There's a Sustrans survey as well that's available, and that was undertaken as part of the stakeholder engagement also. The LCWIP identifies a range of priority schemes, including improvements to the dump path. The dump path itself is shown in the draft LCWIP as a high priority because of its route to the school. The existing path is also in relatively poor condition. It's also very busy, especially during particular periods of the day. There are regular conflicts along that path between pedestrians and cyclists, particularly on tight corners and narrow areas which exist along the path. Active Travel 4 funding became available through Active Travel England, and the Council applied to develop concept and detailed design feasibility works for the dump path as a flagship project. The Council was successful and received £11,000 from Active Travel England. Given the potential cost of preparing detailed designs, it's anticipated that match funding of £10,000 from the Council's General Fund Reserve is required, taking the total to £21,000 for detailed design feasibility. So you can see the three recommendations as part of the report. One, that members approve the draft LCWIP as a consultation draft to be published for a 4-week period for the community to feed back on. And for members to approve the proposal to commence optioneering, concept, feasibility, public engagement and detailed design for the dump path, to include the funding already secured from Active Travel England, plus a match fund from the Council General Fund Reserve for up to £10,000 if it's required, and that members approve the submission of further funding bids, likely to Active Travel 5 when it becomes available, to secure the delivery of the dump path scheme as a whole. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Councillor Sims, please.
Firstly, is it is it an official name? If it's not called the dump, can we call it School Lane? Every time I hear Rebecca say it, every time I read dump app, it gasps. And also, if you're looking to get funding from people, creating an initial bad impression is not a good idea. So School Lane's palatable, dump house just plain unpleasant.
I think in the submission to I shall record it, Doilies Wood path route to school, but locally I think there's a lot of terminology around being called dump path. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. Once upon a time it was Sylvester's Lane a long time ago. So, yeah, and I saw this a while back now. Rebecca sent it to me to have a look, and I looked through it thoroughly. I didn't look through it as thoroughly yesterday, I must admit, or the day before. But one thing, I asked for a couple of amendments, but they weren't put in. Now, one of the things it does say that it's 20 miles an hour is basically the maximum speed most people can go here. That is just palpably untrue. The vast majority of the island's roads, people can do well over 20, and I think that needs to be amended. And the page, the infographic with trip generators on it is wrong, and I have a level of expertise on this. I can tell you, people do go to the swimming pool, certainly, but overwhelmingly, they go to Police Street, Telegraph, and Old Town. They are the three major trip generators here. And one I think is, my favourite one is one fatality, cyclists versus pedestrians. Now, I don't recall a road death over here, but I do recall there was an accident 2 or 3 years ago, and the pedestrian is conspicuously not dead. I mean, I think she asked for a bus timetable last week, and I believe she was allocated a council flat recently. And if we're allocating much needed housing to dead people, there's something seriously amiss with the council. So I just think they should be amended.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sims. It's a bit like telling people why would they ride on a community bus when there's a hostile and unreliable service, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
I really welcome any scheme the council bring forward to promote walking and cycling, and would just remind members a lot of this fits into our corporate plan as well in various different strands and threads and things like that. For me, the appendix is comprehensive, a little too comprehensive, if anything. There seems to be handrails going all over the place, which I suspect we can probably manage without. Whatever we call it, the path that leads through Morwell to the school, I think, is a good project. I'll just make the points I made in the workshop, though. Part of the safety of that path is the fact it's so wide, sort of twisty and windy and different surfaces. I'm just cautious that by making significant improvements to the surface and making it straighter, we're potentially creating some problems in terms of speed that we just sort of contradict what we're trying to achieve. So I just want to make sure we're careful on that. But again, there were some comments in here about encouraging more children to cycle to school, which I thought was a little unfair. I think the cycle storage areas at the school are bursting at the seams, I think. Again, it's an example where children and young people are setting the example and adults should follow, particularly around that area. But I'm also just a bit cynical. Whatever we do, I think we could spend £1 billion on trying to make walking and cycling better on the city, but I suspect whatever we do, some people will still drive very short distances, potentially arguably unnecessarily. But I think overall, I look forward to seeing some of this come to fruition.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bedford, please.
Mine's just a query, Rebecca. It's really good. Great idea. But I got into this travel survey, and the response rate was pretty poor, wasn't it? Because for quantitative data, you usually need a response rate of about 25%, and the response rate was 8% and 2% in equality and diversity, which are pretty appalling, really. And then apparently £100 was offered, in a draw to encourage people, incentive to get people to do the survey. What systems were in place to stop the same person doing it twice? The survey. £100, go a long way.
I probably have to get back to you on that because I wasn't there in the role when that happened. I know Sustrans undertook the survey on behalf of the council and the consultant at the time, so I'd have to go back to them and ask what measures were put in place. I'm not able to answer that, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roger, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report, which has been very interesting. I wanted to just pick out, as you might expect, the Hugh Street bits in here rather than the cycling bits. There's a lot of information and recommendations, etc., and there's, on my calculation, you've added up £3.6 million worth of work, which you say might have to double for shipping costs. Might have to triple for shipping costs if we're not careful. My concern is that if we look at particularly the Hugh Street situation, which gets worse and worse year on year, in my opinion, I'm just afraid that such a consultation report, like I think the last Hugh Street consultation report on a shelf somewhere in the offices, that this might end up in the same place. So it would be good to know how we move this on from here, where the money might be found, and is there a serious attempt at solving the Hugh Street issue with wider pavements and single file traffic or other recommendations I know the consultants have made. So I just want to pull that out and get some assurances that it won't sit on the shelf for the next few years.
So essentially the highway footway and condition survey that we had undertaken identifies the same issues, particularly with footpaths being in bad point of repair on St Mary's. So it's identified also in the LC WIP, and we've got it in there also. We are at the moment looking at developing an asset management plan as well for our highways and footways, which is something the council doesn't currently have in place, which we're working with an external consultant to help support. So with those documents all together, hopefully the evidence put forward for strategic planning for redeveloping the footways will be taken forward. We'll be able to use those as high priority areas, particularly Hugh Town, Hugh Street being the fundamental street that's so busy for everyone. So the plan is part of that to move forward to look for additional funding as part of capital programme of works. Obviously working with partners such as South West Water also, because there's potentially lots of plans afoot there, so we just need to align perhaps some of those projects, but that is certainly the intention. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicola?
Yeah, I think the point here is we've got to have the evidence in place to get the funding, so we'll go for Active Travel 5, that's coming up very soon, so we've got a plan in place, we've got something that's ready for delivery, and I think that's where we're at really, is we need to just make sure we've got the right evidence, we're ready to go, and we can make those really strong funding bids, so it's not all on the council's shoulders, we need to make the most of external grants too.
Thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Grottick next because she's been waiting. Councillor Sims, do you mind turning your light off just so that she can come on? Thank you, and then I'll bring you in next. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick query, please. It says in the recommendation £11,000 of active travel funding, which has been secured, which is great, and then up to £10,000 from the General Fund Reserve, and this is with respect to the dump path. And it just seems to me 21, and then when you get to paragraph 19, it appears the total is 21,000 as a definite, and all I would quickly like reassurance on is that we are trying to get value for money, because 21,000 for a design feasibility study does seem to me an awful lot, but then what do I know? It's not my field, so perhaps I'm just needing to read round a bit more, but it does seem an awful lot of money.
We'll seek value for money through our procurement process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yes, part of the report alludes to repaving the roads that weren't done in 2014. Well, that's going to cost an awful lot of money. We got it, if you like, I think it was 16 million quid then. We got it on the cheap because they were already over here, Lagan were already over here doing the roads, and getting that done again, I think it's going to be slightly problematic. There's a lot about the state of the pavements, which I think is really important, because there were pavements out of town, particularly once you get past Sunnyside towards Twins, where the pavements are so bad that people will push buggies or drag suitcases. They're in the road because the pavement's untenable. And some of the reasons why, even if the pavements are okay, people can't go on them because the hedges haven't cut back, is something we also need to address a little bit earlier than perhaps we have this year. And there was something else which I've entirely forgotten.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Bedford's concerns about the stats in the figures. I mean, it says that 52% of people have rarely or never used a car on the Arthur City, and I'm not quite sure from my experience of living there that that's entirely true. So those stats are, if we're basing stuff on those stats, I'll take them with a massive pinch of salt. And just the usual caveats around capacity. We've got a big capital programme. We've got 2 big capital projects as well. If we're adding another one to the list, and the council cope with that. What's in place?
Yeah, so I think in terms of managing our capacity, what we need to look at is whenever we put in funding bids is making sure we've got the revenue to employ a project manager to help us do the delivery stage. So it then helps with the in-house capacity. We still have to act as client. We need to make sure in any of our funding bids we're making sure that we've got the resources in there to deliver the project, not just the capital funding, but the revenue funding as well.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock, please.
Probably not something I should be saying, but is there any liability perhaps on the council should someone fall over on these pavements we've now identified as being substandard? And do we have a process in place for clarifying should we be sued regularly, now having highlighted them?
So we undertake a safety inspection of the highways and footways as routine as part of the operational work, highways maintenance and repair team. And all of that is written down as part of what they do. But that's the point of getting the asset management plan that we need to get in place, because that then informs the way that the safety inspection should be undertaken, and then it puts forward a maintenance programme, the yearly maintenance programme, and off the back of that then looking at funding opportunities for much bigger projects that need to be done, which are outside of the remit of the maintenance and repair team locally.
And we have liability insurance for the local authority. We occasionally get claims, but that's all local authorities have that in place. So we'll confirm that. But yes, we have liabilities in place.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I've remembered now. The path between Porthmelon Beach and Porthlow Park is pretty dire. However, I mean, you can't really get around that really steep hill going down to the boat park. But that's something we can mitigate with signposts, i.e. mobility issue, and then they can just go around the other road. But the other thing that struck me was talking about cyclists and cyclist training. There's no conceivable way that Chris Evans is going to be able to train cyclists throughout the summer, nor would he be willing to. He's not going to be able to. The problem we have with cyclists is you look at a lot of people, they come over here, they haven't ridden a bike since they passed their test in 1963. They think they can ride a bike, and they probably can. And and that's something we just have to be aware of as drivers, because it's not anything we can actually do. We can't stop them riding bikes. We could just wish they wouldn't, but they will. So, as the training cyclist, I think that's an absolute non-starter. Chris certainly hasn't got the resources, and he definitely won't have the inclination to do it. And I don't think that the people who passed the test in 1960, people think that, we could ride a bike then. I'm sure I can now. I don't think it'll work.
Thank you for that. Words of wisdom. Councillor Watt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to welcome the general ethos of this whole project, which would, in my mind, would only help to improve safety on the road, either cycling or walking. I mean, as you know, I'm a regular cyclist, do about 3,000 miles a year, which is probably a bit more than most cars over here. And I always record every single ride on Strava, and I make a comment. And I look back over the last few years, and the scores of times I've put down near misses. And I've been driven into the hedge twice this year by a car coming towards me in the middle of the road, and I've no option but to launch myself into the hedge to avoid being decimated. So any report like this is the start of safety, then I would certainly welcome. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Watt. Councillor Bedford, please.
Rebecca, can I just query something with the pavements and all the repairs? Quite often BT are digging something up, and South West Water have probably got works. Is there a process where we're going to work with the partners for efficiency of cost for any work, because it's just, we wouldn't see one road dug up one day and then somebody else doing something to it another day.
Yeah, so what we've got is an infrastructure group now that takes all stakeholders on the island, including Openreach, South West Water, Western Power, and the Duchy and others. We're all doing works, have intention to do works on the island, have joined an infrastructure group. So we've got a massive programme of works, and what we're looking at is that overlap, those synergies where we can use either the same workforce and move on to the next, or we dig it up once and then we do those other three things at the same time. So we're very grateful that we've got that now. We've actually got this huge Gantt chart of what's happening over the next few years, and there's a lot happening. The key will be to make sure those conversations continue, and we continue to make sure we coordinate our activity to make it as efficient and effective as possible, because otherwise it's going to be very disruptive.
You put it so much better than me. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Legg, please.
I don't have any further questions on this, but I wanted to propose the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims?
I'd happily second the recommendations, and also just in the light of what Steve said about cars driving in the middle of the road, maybe you could put some signs up. Please remember you're not driving in Belgium, because they are on the wrong side of the road an awful lot.
Okay, thank you very much. So, I have a proposer and seconder for the recommendations. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Rebecca, for your report. We move on swiftly now to item 15, which is the Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Assurance and Review in the hands of our Chief Fire Officer, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors and colleagues. There's two Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service reports and associated documents on today's agenda for a full fire authority to sign off, and these have both been through scrutiny committee previously. I appreciate these are being presented a quarter behind of where they should be, but I will ensure that these will be presented timely next year and beyond. So the first agenda item is the annual assurance statement with the recommendation that the Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Statement of Assurance is approved and signed off at full council as the Fire and Rescue Authority. Chair, I'll take it that the report and documents have been read, but just a gentle reminder that this was a backward look at the last year of 22-23, predominantly at the Fire and Rescue Service's performance, our achievements, and some areas of project work that have been carried into this new financial year, which is aligned to our community risk management plan. The purpose of this is to provide assurance to yourselves, to the communities, and to the government that the Fire and Rescue Service is being delivered efficiently and effectively. Once it's been agreed and signed off, this will be published on the Council's website as a requirement. So at this point, can I ask if there are any questions or any areas of clarity required that I can answer?
Thank you very much, Mark. Councillor Sims, please.
I haven't got any questions that I didn't put on scrutiny. I think it's a good report and it's very helpful. Now, I'm not sure if this is in agenda item 15 or the next one. It does sort of say that cost per capita for fire and rescue elsewhere in the UK averages £25. And it is NA for us. It'd be quite useful to have that figure, because I think it costs about 450,000 a year to run fire and rescue here. Maybe wrong, but you divide that by 2,000. It's considerably more than 25 quid.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sims. I don't see any more questions, Mark. So could I have a proposer and seconder? Councillor Sims proposed, Councillor Mumford seconded for the recommendations. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for your report, Mark. So while you're in the chair, we'll take the next item, which is also yours, please. The Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service, His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services Inspection Action Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as you've just announced, the HMI CFSRS inspection report and the Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Action Plan, which is in response to the report. So, again, an agenda item that's been to Scrutiny Committee and requiring our full fire authority to sign off. So, 2 recommendations in support of this: that the Council of the Isles of Scilly, full council members, read the HMI inspection report and the associated action plan, and also that the HMI CFSRS action plan is approved and signed off at full council as the Fire and Rescue Authority. But what I will do is just take the opportunity to summarise the grading. The last inspection in 2022, last year, graded the Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service as good for effectiveness. So there's no change from our previous inspection. Requires improvement for efficiency. Now, this is a change from good from the previous inspection to requires improvement, but we do, and I can give you assurance that we fully understand the reasons behind this, and this is predominantly focusing around the SLAs which are in place with the airport and Cornwall. But to date, an awful lot of work has been done around reviewing these 2 key SLAs and putting in place the measures that would be required to demonstrate that we are working efficiently. And finally, good for people. Now, this is a positive change from previously requires improvement, which is really positive. It demonstrates some great work that's taken place. There is still much to do, but I can assure you that we're being supported by the council to achieve this, ready for our next inspection and general improvement of the service. So again, at this point, can I please ask if there are any questions or areas of clarity required at this part of the agenda item? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. Councillor Sims.
I don't have any questions really, and I think it was a pretty good inspection report, and the main conclusion really from it was the direction of travel was good, and I have every confidence in the fire service to deliver those improvements. So I would happily propose recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please.
Yes, I would happily second the recommendations, but the recommendations aren't written out.
Yes, they're on the wrong page, I'm afraid. If you look at page 243, I'll read them out, that the Council of the Isles of Scilly full council members read the inspection report and the action plan, and that the action plan is approved and signed off at full council as the Fire and Rescue Authority.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'll second it.
I have to say I had a problem finding it as well, but
I thought I'd seen it somewhere, but
it said page 233 and it was actually page 243.
Okay,
so
thank you very much.
We'll let you off. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second the.
Thank you. All those in favour, please. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank you, Mark, very much for the reports, and also please pass on our thanks to Kevin James for his support in this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We move on now to item 17 on the agenda, which is our last item. Item 18 is supposed to be in part 2. So we just have item 17 now, which is the Planning Skills Delivery Fund application, and that's in the hands of our Chief Planning Officer, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. So the Council of the Isles of Scilly, as with the wider planning sector, continues to face capacity and capability challenges. And in light of this, the government is seeking to ensure local authorities are better equipped and supported to deliver development now and into the future. The Capacity and Capability Programme aims to provide the direct support to secure a skilled planning workforce in local government. As part of this, they are looking to support local planning authorities directly through the Planning Skills Delivery Fund. So whilst the funding is not guaranteed, it's an opportunity for this council to apply for up to £100,000 in this first year, this 2-year funding programme, to assist with the clearing of backlogs for applications already in the planning system and upskilling the existing workforce. Due to the island's rather unique situation, we don't have significant backlogs of application works, but the limited resources means the existing staff are focused primarily on dealing with planning applications, planning enforcement and pre-application work, resulting in delays in being able to swiftly progress other aspects of planning policy work and policy review. We have therefore identified the need to secure additional planning resource to assist in dealing with planning applications, allowing existing officers to focus on critical policy and local plan review work. The second element of the funding is aimed at upskilling, and in order to address the issues of conservation and the historic environment management, we have identified the need to carry out a priority piece of work, which is a conservation area appraisal. So there's a statutory requirement to review conservation areas, which for Scilly has never been formally reviewed, and no character statement, which would set out a clear management strategy, has ever been formally adopted by the Council. Securing funding to carry out this work with external heritage specialists, working closely with existing staff and seeking further training for existing staff would also allow planning decision-making and policy-making to address on a more targeted basis the preservation and enhancement of the island's conservation area and wider historic environment. So an application has therefore been submitted to secure £85,000 for the Planning Skills Delivery Fund, with £35,000 sought to secure planning support over the next 12 months and £50,000 to undertake upskilling and critical conservation area review work. So the first recommendation before you is to endorse this application that's already been made. The second recommendation is to delegate the acceptance of any funding offer to the Council Section 151 officer. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Bedford, please.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a quick comment, really, and I think you did actually allude to it. I have actually read this, even though it was right towards the end, and I couldn't locate any backlog in which is what the grant is for, but you have actually said it's a backlog in the work that's created from the planning applications. Is that clear?
Yes. Sorry.
What sort of work?
Planning applications in the system. So on the mainland, there are backlogs of hundreds of planning applications that we're not in that situation because we deal with such small caseload of applications. We don't have a significant backlog, but just dealing with applications takes us away from just being able to focus on policy review. So we don't quite fit what this half of this money is aimed at, but we are seeking to sort of make the case that our limited resources means we can't get on and prioritise policy review work. So it's literally dealing with our planning applications.
There wasn't a criticism, don't go for the grant. It was just an observation. I couldn't find any.
Yeah, our handful is quite small, a backlog.
Go for the money.
Thank you. And I've got another apology to make to Councillor Marcus for not coming to him first.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's been a long meeting. But Councillor Marcus, if you'd like to come in, thank you.
It'd be really good to actually get some work done on reviewing the local plan and make sure it's relevant. We all know there's issues around that need to be re-examined. So I would propose recommendations.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Grottick. All those in favour? It's unanimous as well. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Lisa, for your work. As mentioned, that was the last item on our agenda, but I will just hand over to the Chief Executive just to comment on item 18 that's in part 2. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As I mentioned earlier, and thanks, Anita, for raising it. I'm intending, in consultation with the Vice Chair, to bring a new performance management framework to October Council for you to formally ratify. And I'm intending, I've got a management meeting tomorrow with all the heads of service to bring forward our service planning cycle to be much more in tune with what you would expect in a normal performance management framework. So what that means is draft performance service plans should be done in November, and there should be consultation with members as part of the budget setting round, and then the final service plans will come in part 1 for ratification at Council in February. So these were backward looking. I think it's more important that we actually get members' input into the forward looking ones and to tie that much more closely into the budget setting round, so that when Russell comes and does his famous PowerPoint presentations with you. Lead members will be informed about some of the service pressures within their service plans to, in effect, fight their corner on behalf of their services as part of the budget round, and therefore that all goes through to February for council approval. But all that will be laid out in a report to come before you in October, which hopefully you'll support.
Councillor Bedford, did you want to come back?
Can I just thank Paul for responding to my very long email on the Sunday? As you know, I had real issues with some of these service plans because there's no consistency, there's no format. Some had mandatory training numbers, some didn't. And I am actually very heartened to know that this will be addressed and it will have a much better structure that I can read and understand, and hopefully the public will be reassured as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our council meeting for today. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.